Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I am Shreya Wagmare, working as research engineer at Maritime Research Center. Today, I will take your attention to one of the most important part of our coastal zone, that is coastal community, and my research around it. So, we'll be discussing UDA-driven assessment of livelihood opportunities for coastal communities in the tropical waters. So here's my short outline of the things that we'll be discussing, some general terms and then the community part and as a whole and then UDA framework. Let's start with the understanding of tropical waters. The shaded zone that you are looking in the middle of the earth near equator is known as tropical waters, and this region is known for its rich and diverse biodiversity, a very stable, suitable and favorable environment to survive the ecosystem. So moving ahead, what is coastal community? In short, the people living between land and sea and highly dependent on ocean resources for food and survival. So let's hear a fact that 40% of the global population lives in a coastal zone of 100 kilometer and around 15% of the Indian population lives in the Indian coastal region, which is around 570 million people out of 1.4 billion, and that's a huge population. And in developing country like India, this coastal population highly dependent on ocean resources for foods, jobs and livelihood. But as the developing nation, economical development pressures are actually marginalizing the traditional practices in favor of corporate driven activities. Now let's go more into that. Traditional practices like fishing, boat building, aquaculture, and salt production are not only their economical, social, or cultural practices, but they are intergenerational practices which are being carried out since their millennia. So, due to the development pressure and economical gain, these traditional practices are getting marginalized over these corporate activities like mechanized fishing, large scale aquaculture, building western resorts, and these things come with ecological cost and they go against with the local traditional sensibilities also. So to give you a quick idea, see the numbers of fishing industry in the market evolution. So 80% of the local population in the coastal region is dependent on traditional fishing methods and 20 on the industrial fishing. But to notice one thing, 20%, 80% of the revenue is captured by that 20% industrial fishing only due to the mass fishing, and only 20% is done through the 80% of local population. So to address this issue, government has implemented some policies like national fisheries policy, and we are aware of Sagarmala, Sagar Vision, Neel Kranti, which is also known as Blue Revolution, NPCA. So these all policies has a approach to stabilize the coastal zone via fishing or tourism or port development, etc. So other than this, there is also policy like ICZM, Integrated Coastal Zone Management Plan, or marine protected areas. But most of the coastal communities are not even aware of that. They are addressing coastal region as a whole, which includes the stakeholders, but as a coastal community as a soul, there are surely some gaps. So gaps in the sense based on the current policies, which things can be considered and assessed again. So this is what gap means. And as the increasing population and resource requirements, these gaps are identified. So let's have a look at them. So next two slides will discuss two different aspects of gap layer present. So first, as a social, cultural, and economical gain. So these uh, coastal communities are not getting that much of gain because they are not able to keep up with the trend of this corporate-driven economical development. So that is why one of the major effect in the social gap is migration. People are migrating to their native cities for food security and economical gain, and that's surely a loss of a cultural practice as well, even the traditions. So traditional practices are not getting enough revenue and attention, hence generating this economical gap as well in the coastal communities point of view. Another way to look at this is communities are not aware of the geotechnological developments. Here, geotechnological term refers to the application of scientific methods and engineering techniques to utilize the natural resources. So they are not aware that digital tools which can help them to predict the production of aqua farming products or prediction of fishing zones. So they are not aware of these opportunities which has economical gain as well. Hence, these things create a huge gap between the geotechnology, the coastal community, and even though there are policies like MSP, Marine Special Planning, which needs to be implemented, so these three aspects are not linked with each other properly. So an interconnection between them plays an important role in overall governance. So now to assess and fill the layers and these gaps, this is where UDA framework comes into picture. We are aware of the terms and diverse direction in which UDA framework can be integrated. So how it can be helpful to understand and minimize these gaps and layer. Also, we'll understand how this UDA framework can be a game changer for assessment as well as enhancement of the coastal communities. So this is the larger picture of everything that we have discussed till now. The UDA framework driven assessment for livelihood of the coastal communities. I'll give you a short fact that this octopus can do different task at the same time with its tentacles, differently as well as collaboratively. So that's how this assessment works. So these eight stakeholders that you are looking at, each represented by individual tentacle, can be assessed and enhanced individually as well as collaboratively. So I'll give you in short meaning behind all these stakeholders, layer by layer. So for example, digital transformation support through digital tools like uh, MSP tool or APY tool for shrimp and seaweed farming can map and predict the yield production. And again, taking talking about digital transformation as a whole, where field deployment needs a community engagement support. Even though modeling and simulation, field validation are the important steps to be considered in data generation, but the base support of community engagement is much needed. So along with digital transformation, there's optimal governance at top. So as United Nations has declared this decade as decade of the ocean sciences for sustainable development, and Intergovernmental Ocean Commission IOC under UNESCO is driving the marine special planning as the governance tool. So this UDA framework driven assessment will be a game changer for coastal communities. It also provides policy and technology interventions along with acoustic capacity and capability building to manage the challenges as well as opportunities in the tropical waters. So strategic security involves protecting the interest of coastal communities, their livelihood, and the marine ecosystem from the external threats. These threats can be from the corporate aggression or maybe climate change or environmental degradation as well. So, to give you another aspect of strategic security, uh, community migration as a major issue can be taken into consideration, where skilling, innovation, and research gaps can be assessed via UDA framework, where appropriate skilling for the livelihood opportunities can be given, small scale innovations can be taken up, and these innovations can also create different job opportunities for the locals. Community stabilization along with the coastal security is also one of the important part in the strategic security of a nation. So now sustainability and climate change. These excessive corporate driven activities and Western culture in marine and freshwater can cause serious acoustic habitat degradation in the underwater ecosystem. So, due to high underwater noise, underwater species like big whales get stranded, causing fatalities. Hence, environment impact assessment is also important. So, moving ahead to aquaculture and fisheries, as we discussed, traditional practices like fishing, shrimp and seaweed farming, they can be assessed and yield production can be predicted through digital tools. Also, traditional fishing can be enhanced by support of the digital signal processing platforms as well. So this rich biodiversity can be assessed and protected. For example, turtle protection act is there, or as well as mangrove areas are protected. So they play a crucial part of resource management and biodiversity stabilization as well. So now in the transport sector, a proper supply chain for the waterways that can be implemented using VDA framework. which will be helpful to conserve the marine protected areas and biodiversity as well. So implementation of MSP as a technology intervention can help them to adapt to the technology and can create awareness into the community. Like cultural sensitivity can be prioritized over the Western culture. Tourism development can help in the livelihood opportunities based on the traditional practices only, so that they can cope up with the corporate trend which is going on. Likewise, to end on a note that there are tons of stakeholders and livelihood opportunities which can be assessed as well as enhanced by implementing the UDA framework as a body of structure driving these tentacles, which are the stakeholders. So these are the few important references that I listed, which mention these policies and practices that we discussed. Thank you for your patient listening.